Welcome to this small presentation on the biases. This is part of our marketing models series, but it's one of the theories, concepts, which lies a little bit below what is traditionally taught, especially in introduction courses. So this small video is introducing the cognitive biases, and then I'll do some more videos on how to use them and the specifics of some of these cognitive biases. Leave a comment below in the comment section and I'll choose between them. I'll also be doing some of the ones which I found most relevant, but let's get into it. So, introduction to cognitive biases. Here on the side, you can see a huge list. I've tried to structure them up a bit. And if you go to our dear friend Wikipedia and search for cognitive bias list, you'll get this huge list of things. In essence, they're structured in three categories: the social, the memory, and the behavior, decision-making, belief categories. So I'll get back to that in the next couple of minutes, what that actually means. But they are also categories, that's types, and I'll get into some of the more relevant ones for a marketing and sales and business perspectives in the end here. But let's start out. The cognitive biases are systematic patterns of deviations from what is the norm or rationality adjustment. It's fancy word for when things are not as they're supposed to be if you're a logical, reasonable person. So this is where we deviate and where people deviate from what's expected. The belief, decision-making, and behavioral ones are the ones which are under the reasoning process, the business and economic decisions, and the human behavior in general. It's also what often comes as behavioral economics. Why do people behave in the way that they are doing? And as you can see, this is the biggest category that we have here in the biases. So this is also where you see the types are, especially you can see there's these small color codings we have out here. Some of them will come back. I'm also putting a link in the comments for this video where you can find all of these in details. The next one is the social one, or the social biases. It relates to the expectation and the interpretation and the interactions in between people. How do we do? What expectations do we have? And when do these expectations not live up to what we are expecting? Or the biases, or the sometimes called prejudices. So what is it that makes us do these things to each other? The memory. The brain is a fantastic thing, but also a tricky thing, because we cannot remember everything. It would be great. I'd love to remember everything, but just as anyone else, when I read things, I forget a big part of it. I make notes. It helps me a bunch, but it doesn't make me total recall or anything like that. And the memory biases are the ones which enhances or impairs recall of a memory. Why is it that we remember the things that we do? And why is it sometimes that we remember things in a different way? Think of it in the way that my wife remembers everything I've said over time. I remembers nothing. If she tells me I've promised something, I've probably done that, but I don't remember it. But then also we can categorize them as types, and some of them are more interesting than others, and I'm taking a few examples here. The anchoring biases. This is something which has happened in the past. Why are these things interesting, and what has in effect had that on today? The attribution. This is where we're looking at the groupings. We're looking at, this is a group of people, everybody does that. The kids have a tendency of coming home and say, everybody has a mobile phone. Well, this is actually an anchoring bias that they're trying to create. Everybody in the group, and therefore they should have as well. Availability bias is the bias which relates to what comes to mind first. This is actually what magicians often use. And think about it, if I had had a Coca-Cola can in the beginning, and I was drank from it, put it down. And now I ask you, so think of a soft drink. You would automatically think of Coca-Cola because of the anchoring bias. What has come recently is also what's being used now. Confirmation bias. The confirmation bias is what we're talking about when we're cursing at your Facebook, your Instagram, and all the social media. They are enhancing things and you're having this echo chamber of things. It's the confirmation bias that kicks through because people see the things which confirm their beliefs. This is all the biases in that category. Egocentric. Well, I'm better than the rest, or at least I think I am. Or like ask any man, are they better or worse than at driving than the average? A very high percentage would say they are better than the average. It's because our belief about ourselves is higher than average, the egocentric biases. We also have the extension bias, and this is an interesting one because this is where we come a little bit into academia, or at least the peripheries of it. When we have a sample size or we have a group that we figure something out about, we have a tendency of attributing the same phenomenon to all, even though there are differences. So that's the extension of the sample to the population. We have asked two guys, well, then that is the case for everybody. Almost the last one, the framing effect that we have here is the framing of things. And this is especially what we use in marketing and sales. If we present a product in a positive way, well, you have a tendency of perceiving this product in a positive way. Do we present it in a negative way, say a competitor? Well, you will perceive the competitor in a negative way. This is also where we get a little bit into the ethics discussions when we frame things in a positive or a negative way. The logical fallacy, because something happened, then another thing will happen. These logical fallacies, or I'm on a streak in my gaming. I've been hitting the sixes of dice at the craps table the last 3 times. I'll also do it this time. It's a logical fallacy. There's no reason why it should happen, but I have the feeling that it's going to happen. Logical fallacy. The last one I'll be talking about is the prospect theory. This is also a little bit related to the gaming and the game theory. And it's also one of the things that Kahneman has put into his big theories, which if I remember correctly, won a Nobel Prize for in behavioral economics. We have a tendency of putting more value in avoiding a loss than gaining a profit. So we would do more to avoid losing our house than to do something to gain an additional house. So this asymmetry between expectation of loss and gain is what we talk about in prospect theory. What can it be used for? Well, the examples I've given so far is more where we are the ones using the biases to sell something, to promote something. But you also should turn it inwards and be aware of your own biases. When is it actually that someone is trying to use me as a person? How are they using the biases that I have? Because you do have biases. It's a natural thing. You cannot avoid them. your brain would explode if you hadn't used the biases to limit the inputs. So use them for yourself and use it in your sales and marketing. All right. Thank you for watching this small introduction to cognitive biases. I'll do a bunch of videos on specific biases that can be used in specific situations in the coming weeks. So subscribe and follow on. Thank you for listening in.